I came face to face with my former best friend 10 years after he betrayed me during the worst time of my life, when I was already at rock bottom. I thought time might have changed him, but the moment he opened his mouth and told me why he did it, I realized I hate him even more now than I did back then. A decade ago, on the morning of our anniversary, my spouse informed me she no longer loved me and desired a divorce. Initially, I believed it to be a jest, but it was not. She had simply fallen out of affection and felt the need to advance with her life. Despite this, she still saw fit to accept the diamond necklace I had acquired as a gift. Regardless, it was devastating. Yet surprisingly, the most difficult aspect was not separating from her. It was the separation from my 6-year-old daughter. I cherished her with all my being, but the court did not concur, primarily due to the actions of my closest friend. I recall that day in court with striking clarity. My best friend, a man I had known since secondary school, unexpectedly took the stand. At first, I felt a sense of relief, certain he would corroborate my account. Instead, he met my gaze directly and began to weep, confirming my wife's narrative and recounting to everyone how he had observed me violently shaking my daughter during one of my outbursts. My jaw dropped. I stared at him as if it were a terrible dream. He proceeded to present doctored messages and video recordings of my daughter and me, our joyful moments distorted to portray me as an abusive monster. I glanced at my wife, who was feigning tears, as if every word he uttered were true. The judge regarded me with disdain. My legal counsel was unprepared. Even he looked at me as though I were deceitful when I asserted this was fabricated. That day, I lost everything. No visitation, no phone calls, nothing. When I exited the courtroom, I could barely breathe. I collected my belongings and returned home, proceeding to drown my sorrows in liquor. Once intoxicated, I telephoned my best friend, slurring my words and demanding to know why he had ruined my existence. But all I received in return was laughter, cold and self-satisfied. He bluntly stated, "I've desired your wife for so long. You understand how obsessed I can become when I'm in love." Then my former wife took the phone, her voice dripping with malice. "You will be a superior father to her than you ever were. You will never see your daughter again." I began to weep over the phone, pleading with them to tell me they were jesting. Instead, my ex intensified my pain. She revealed they had been intimately involved behind my back for 2 years, meticulously planning how to seize my daughter from me. The entire affair was a meticulously orchestrated deception to shatter my life. I was heartbroken. I should have confronted them, but I did not. I relocated to another state, starting anew, but I never relinquished hope. I continued to dispatch birthday cards, letters, and gifts to my daughter, hoping she would understand her father's affection. Yet, I never received a response. All I knew for certain was that my ex was fabricating stories to her about my past actions when she was a child. My ex confessed this herself. I was almost resigned to the fact that she would never truly know me. But then, unexpectedly, a decade later, a phone call arrived that shattered everything. A hospital from my former hometown stated my daughter had been involved in an automobile accident. They informed me my name was listed as her emergency contact. My heart nearly burst. Why was I her emergency contact? But I did not inquire. I simply leaped into my vehicle, my hands trembling throughout the drive. When I entered that hospital waiting room, my former wife and erstwhile best friend sat stunned, clearly not anticipating my presence. The atmosphere was thick with discomfort. My ex-wife quietly rose and moved towards the medical personnel, presumably to caution them, leaving him and me alone. I uttered no sound, and that is when he began to speak. Initially, he appeared emotional, almost as if he might offer an apology, but instead, his words inflamed my anger. He confessed to me with a cruel tone that he had never delivered any of the letters or gifts I had sent to my daughter. He scoffed about how he had convinced her I had abandoned her. But then, just as I thought it could not worsen, he shifted his demeanor. A feigned sorrow began to emanate from his every word, attempting to portray himself as the aggrieved party. "I'll admit it," he stated, adopting a self-righteous act. "I neglected her. Children are a lot of effort. Man, you know how it is. I'm not proud of this, but there were instances she needed a good smack. Honestly, I'm doing you a kindness by allowing you back into her life now. She's a mess. You should express your gratitude." I felt myself on the verge of exploding. Every fiber of my being yearned to strike him right there. But before I could respond, a faint, frail voice called out from behind the slightly ajar curtain nearby. My daughter, awake, gazing at both of us, her eyes filled with anguish and bewilderment. I rushed over, my heart pounding so intensely I could scarcely hear anything else. She appeared so diminutive in that hospital bed, her face pale and bruised from the collision. I hurried to her side, my legs barely supporting me. Her eyes darted between me and my former best friend, confusion and apprehension mingling in her expression. "Dad?" she whispered, and that single word nearly broke me. After a decade, she still remembered. My ex-wife burst through the curtain, her face flushed with panic. She seized a nurse's arm, pointing at me while speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The nurse glanced my way, then shook her head and walked away. My ex's strategy, whatever it was failing. "Stay away from her," my ex hissed, positioning herself between me and my daughter. "You have no right to be here." "His name is on my emergency contact list," my daughter said weakly. "I placed it there myself." The room fell silent. My ex-wife's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My former best friend stood up, his false sympathy replaced with something more sinister. "Sweetheart, you're disoriented from the accident," he said, moving towards the bed. "You don't comprehend what you're uttering." "Do not address me as sweetheart," she snapped, then winced from the exertion. "And I know precisely what I am saying." A doctor entered, clipboard in hand. He surveyed the crowded room and frowned. "I will require everyone except immediate family to step outside." "He is not family," my ex said quickly, pointing at me. "He forfeited all parental rights a decade ago." The doctor turned to my daughter. "Miss, you are 16 now. You can decide who remains." She looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time. I saw myself in her eyes, the same green hue, the same slight upturn at the corners. "He stays," she said. "They depart." My ex-wife grabbed the doctor's arm. "You do not comprehend. He is dangerous. He used to harm her when she was little. We possess court documents." "Then summon security," the doctor stated, pulling free. But at this moment, my patient has expressed her wishes clearly. My former best friend stepped forward, his voice adopting that feigned concerned tone again. "Doctor, I believe she might have a head injury. She is not thinking rationally." "Her scans returned clear," the doctor replied. "Now, please step outside so I can examine my patient." They left reluctantly, my ex shooting daggers at me with her eyes. My former best friend whispered something to her as they exited, and she nodded grimly. Once alone with my daughter and the doctor, I pulled a chair close to her bed. The doctor checked her vital signs, inquired about her pain levels, then excused himself to retrieve her medication. "Why did you list me?" I asked when we were alone. She picked at the hospital blanket, avoiding my gaze. "I discovered some old photographs in the attic last year. You and me at the park, at the beach, reading bedtime stories. You appeared content. We both did." My throat tightened. "Those were the finest days of my life. They told me those photos were fake, that you paid someone to alter them to attempt to gain custody." She finally met my eyes, but I could discern they were genuine. "The way you looked at me in those pictures, no one can fabricate that." I reached into my wallet and extracted a worn photograph I had carried for a decade. It depicted her on my shoulders at the county fair, both of us laughing at something out of frame. "This one is my favorite," I said, handing it to her. She examined it, tears forming in her eyes. "I recall this day. You won me that enormous teddy bear." "Mr. Snuffles," I said, smiling despite everything. "You remember his name?" "I remember everything, darling. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone I missed. I sent you cards and letters for all of them." Her face darkened. "I never received them." "I know," I said quietly. "He just informed me." She crushed the blanket in her fists. "They asserted you abandoned me, that you moved away and began a new family, that you no longer desired me. I never remarried, never had other children. I could not replace you." The door burst open. My ex-wife stood there with 2 security guards. "That's him," she said, pointing at me. "He is violating a restraining order." One guard stepped forward. "Sir, I will need to see some identification." I handed over my driver's license, my hands steady despite the anger simmering within me. The guard radioed someone, then waited. After a few minutes, his radio crackled. "There is no active restraining order on file," the voice said. My ex's face went white. "That is impossible. Check again." "Ma'am, we have checked twice. There is no current order against this man." She spun on her heel and stormed out. The guards apologized and left. My daughter observed the entire scene with wide eyes. "She lied about that too?" she asked before I could answer. My former best friend appeared in the doorway. He had clearly been listening from the hall. "Princess, do not allow him to manipulate you. You know what he did." "No," she said firmly. "I know what you told me he did. There is a distinction." His facade slipped for just a second, and I glimpsed his true self beneath, the calculating, cruel man who had stolen my life. Then the feigned concern returned. "You are upset. That is understandable. But consider who has been there for you all these years. Who drove you to school? Who assisted with homework? Who struck me when mom was not looking?" she interrupted. The room grew cold. He stepped back as if she had slapped him. "Princess, I never. Last month you backhanded me because I spoke back. 2 months before that, you shoved me into a wall because I arrived home late. Should I continue? I stood up, my fists clenched. Every protective instinct I had suppressed for a decade surged back. But my daughter grabbed my hand. Do not, she said. He is not worth it. My former best friend's face cycled through emotions. Shock, anger, then back to that false sadness. I was merely attempting to discipline you. You have been so challenging lately. Depart, I said, my voice low and perilous. Now. He looked between us, then turned and left without another word. I sat back down, still holding my daughter's hand. How long? I asked. Since I was 8, she said quietly. At first, it was just yelling, then pushing. The hitting commenced when I turned 13. I yearned to pursue him, to make him atone for every mark he had left on my child. But she required me here more than I desired vengeance. I am so sorry, I said. I should have fought harder. I should have found a way. They told everyone you were dangerous. They possessed evidence, witnesses. Even I believed it for years. The doctor returned with her medication. As he administered it, I noticed my daughter becoming drowsy. Before she fell asleep, I pulled out a business card and wrote my mobile number on the back. This is my number, I said, tucking it into her hand. Call me anytime, day or night, if you require anything at all. She nodded, her eyes already closing. Do not leave yet, she mumbled. I will not, I promised. I sat there for hours, observing her sleep. My ex and former best friend came and went, attempting various tactics. They brought in other family members to guilt me into departing. They tried to persuade different doctors to expel me. Nothing succeeded. As visiting hours concluded, a nurse finally compelled me to leave. My daughter was still asleep, but I left a note on her bedside table. I will return tomorrow. Love, Dad. The subsequent 3 weeks passed in a blur. I extended my leave from work and secured an inexpensive motel near the hospital. Each day I visited during permitted hours. My ex and former best friend were always present, observing, awaiting my misstep. They tried everything. My ex would loudly discuss my violent past within earshot of nurses. My former best friend would make snide remarks about me abandoning my daughter. They even introduced Catherine, an old mutual acquaintance, to testify about my supposed terrible character. But Catherine took one look at me and froze. Oh my goodness, she said. They told me you were incarcerated. That opened a floodgate. Suddenly, she was questioning everything they had told her. When she left that day, she embraced me and whispered, I am so sorry I believe them. My daughter observed it all with keen eyes. She was growing stronger, asking more questions. I answered honestly, even when it was painful. I recounted the divorce, the trial, the decade of silence. I showed her copies of every letter I had sent, every card, every gift receipt. I retained copies, I explained, hoping that someday I could prove I never ceased trying. She cried then, truly cried, not the quiet tears from before, but deep, body-shaking sobs. I held her while she released a decade of falsehoods and manipulation. My ex tried one last desperate maneuver. She arrived with a lawyer, asserting I was emotionally abusing my daughter by confusing her with fabrications. The lawyer, a sharply dressed woman with cold eyes, attempted to serve me with papers. But my daughter spoke up. I desire my own lawyer, she said clearly. I am 16. I possess rights. The hospital's social worker, who had been monitoring the situation, nodded approvingly. I can assist in arranging that, she said. My ex's lawyer departed swiftly thereafter, sensing a losing battle. The day my daughter was discharged, she faced a decision. The social worker had arranged temporary housing options while the legal situation was resolved. She could return home with her mother, stay with a relative, or enter a group home temporarily. What about with my father? She asked. The social worker appeared uncertain, given the past custody arrangement. That was based on falsehoods, my daughter said firmly. I wish to examine the genuine court documents, all of them. It took another week, but we obtained them. Reading through the transcripts was agonizing. My former best friend's testimony was detailed, convincing, and entirely fabricated. But what hurt most was realizing how thoroughly I had been outmaneuvered. This is insane, Catherine said, reading over my shoulder. She had become an unexpected ally, assisting us in navigating the legal system. I remember that day he claimed you shook her. You were at my birthday celebration 3 hours away. We began constructing our case, slowly, carefully. My daughter started texting me from a secret phone she had purchased with saved allowance money. Late-night conversations revealed more abuse, more neglect, more deceptions than I had imagined. One night, she sent a photograph of bruises on her arm from the previous week. She wrote, he said I was being disrespectful. I saved everything, building a file that would utterly defeat them if necessary. But I had to be cautious. One wrong move, and they would find a way to sever contact again. My former best friend must have sensed a shift. He initiated his own campaign, sending me threatening messages from anonymous numbers. "Stay away from my daughter," one read. "You will regret returning," stated another. I kept those two. Then he escalated. My daughter informed me he had shown her proof that I was dangerous. Photographs of women with bruised faces, claiming I had harmed them. Police reports bearing my name. She was astute enough to examine them closely and discern they were forgeries, but it unsettled her. "What if there is something genuine intermingled?" she asked during one of our clandestine meetings at a coffee shop. "What if you did injure someone and do not recall?" I comprehended her apprehension. A decade of psychological manipulation does not vanish overnight. "Let us employ a private investigator," I suggested. "Have them conduct a comprehensive background check on me and on them." She agreed. The investigator's report was enlightening. My record was unblemished, except for the custody dispute. But my former best friend, 2 domestic violence complaints from previous romantic partners, both dropped after they mysteriously departed town, financial irregularities at his workplace, a sealed juvenile record that our investigator could not access but confirmed existed. "He has been planning this for years," the investigator informed us. "The paper trail indicates he was researching custody law months prior to your divorce. We were building our case when disaster nearly struck. I returned to my motel room one evening to discover the door ajar. Inside, police were searching my room. Someone had reported seeing me with stolen merchandise. They found planted evidence. Jewelry I had never seen before, electronics with serial numbers reported stolen. I was arrested on the spot, my heart sinking as I realized how this would appear. But I had learned to be cautious. The motel possessed security cameras, and I had been recording myself entering and exiting every day. The timestamp showed I was at the hospital when the alleged theft occurred. "Someone is framing me," I told the detective. "Please check the footage." They did. The video displayed my former best friend entering my room with a key he had somehow acquired. He spent 10 minutes inside, then left carrying a bag. The charges were immediately dropped. "You might consider filing charges of your own," the detective suggested. I did. The community gathering where everything reached its climax was unplanned. It was a school event my daughter had invited me to, her first public acknowledgement of our bond. My ex and former best friend were there, of course, glaring daggers at me. During a break, he confronted me by the refreshment table. "You believe you are clever," he hissed, "but she will see through you eventually. They always do. Like your former girlfriend saw through you?" I replied calmly. His face reddened. People were beginning to notice our strained conversation. My daughter appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. "Everything all right, Dad?" she asked loudly. The word Dad rippled through the crowd. People who had known our story, or thought they did, began whispering. My ex rushed over. "Sweetheart, come here. Do not stand near him." "No," my daughter said simply. What transpired next was pure impulse. My former best friend grabbed my daughter's arm, attempting to pull her away. She cried out in pain. He seized precisely where her bruises were. "Release her," I said, my voice lethally calm. He squeezed harder. "She is my daughter. I raised her." "You abused her," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "and I can prove it." The room fell silent. He released her arm, his face cycling through emotions. "You are lying, just as you always lie." Catherine stepped out of the crowd. "No, he is not. I have seen the evidence. Photos, medical records, text messages. You have been harming this girl for years." Other people began speaking up. A neighbor mentioned hearing shouting from their residence. A teacher spoke about bruises she had noticed. My daughter's friend admitted she had been sworn to secrecy about the abuse. My former best friend looked around wildly, realizing he was losing control. "This is ludicrous. I am telephoning my lawyer." "Good idea," I said, extracting my phone, "because I possess a recording of you admitting to stealing my daughter's letters. Would you like me to play it?" He lunged at me then, in front of everyone. I sidestepped, and he crashed into the refreshment table. Punch went everywhere. He scrambled up, covered in red liquid, appearing deranged. "You ruined everything," he screamed. "She was supposed to be mine. The life was supposed to be mine." My ex attempted damage control. "He is not himself. The stress of raising a difficult teenager." "Difficult?" my daughter interrupted. "I am difficult because I do not enjoy being struck." The crowd turned on them then. Questions flew. Accusations followed. Someone summoned the police. In the chaos, my former best friend attempted to flee, but several fathers from the community blocked his path. When the police arrived, they took statements from everyone. My daughter spoke clearly, bravely, about years of abuse. I provided my evidence. Catherine testified about the falsehoods she had been told. My former best friend was apprehended that night. As they led him away, he looked at me with unadulterated hatred. "This is not over," he mouthed. But it was. The ensuing custody battle was swift. With copious evidence and my daughter's own testimony, the judge had no alternative. Full custody was granted to me, with supervised visitation for my ex if my daughter desired it. She did not. We relocated into a modest apartment together, commencing anew after a decade apart. It was not simple. She experienced nightmares, trust issues, anger at the lost years. But we navigated it together, with therapy, patience, and affection. 6 months later, Catherine telephoned with news. My former best friend had been convicted of child abuse and attempted frame-up. He received 5 years in prison and would be required to register as a child abuser upon release. It is insufficient, I stated. No, Catherine agreed, but it is something. My daughter overheard the conversation. It is enough, she said quietly. I am free. We are together. That is what matters. I pulled her into an embrace, inhaling the reality of having my daughter back. She was correct. After everything, we had found our way back to each other. The lost years pained us, but we possessed the future. I love you, Dad, she whispered. I love you too, darling. Always have, always will. And for the first time in a decade, I truly believed everything would be all right. The apartment felt excessively quiet that first morning. I awoke early, preparing breakfast while my daughter slept, still adapting to the peculiar normalcy of having her under my roof. The eggs sizzled in the pan as my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something prompted me to answer. Heavy breathing filled the line. Then a distorted voice spoke. You believe you have triumphed? Prison walls cannot contain everything. The line went dead. My hand trembled slightly as I placed the phone down. He had been incarcerated for only 2 weeks, but his influence apparently extended beyond bars. I deleted the call history, not wishing my daughter to worry. She appeared in the doorway moments later, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Smells good, she said, settling at our small kitchen table. We ate in comfortable silence, both still learning how to coexist in the same space after such a prolonged separation. She had therapy at 10 o'clock, then we intended to shop for bedroom furniture, normal father-daughter activities that felt surreal after everything. The therapist's office was across town. I waited in the parking lot, scrolling through work emails, when movement caught my eye. A familiar figure ducked behind a car 3 rows over, my ex-wife. She pretended to search for keys, but I observed her watching the building entrance. When my daughter emerged an hour later, my ex approached her swiftly. I jumped out, intercepting them near the door. Mom. My daughter stepped back, surprise and weariness mingling on her face. Baby, I merely wished to converse, my ex said, reaching out. I miss you so much. You are violating the custody agreement, I stated firmly. You require supervised visitation approval first. Her eyes flashed with anger before settling into practiced sorrow. I am her mother. Surely 5 minutes. No, my daughter's voice was steady. I am not prepared. My ex's mask slipped momentarily, revealing fury underneath. He is poisoning you against me. Can you not perceive that? The only poison originated from you and him, my daughter replied, taking my arm. We are departing. As we walked away, my ex called out. You will regret this, both of you. The furniture shopping trip helped lighten the mood. My daughter selected a desk, bookshelf, and bedding in shades of blue and gray. Witnessing her excitement over something so simple broke my heart a little. She should have experienced years of this, not just months. That evening, while assembling the desk together, she asked, Do you think Mom will attempt something? I tightened a screw carefully. Probably, but we will manage whatever arises. She nodded, passing me another piece. The therapist says I am progressing well, processing everything. You are the strongest person I know, I told her honestly. Her smile was worth every struggle we had confronted. The next few weeks passed peacefully, too peacefully. I should have known something was brewing. The first indication came through Catherine, who telephoned one evening sounding shaken. Someone broke into my house, she said. Nothing stolen, but my computer was accessed. All our emails about your case were deleted. Did you contact the police? Yes, but without evidence of what was taken, she sighed. I have backups, do not worry, but this feels targeted. It did. I enhanced security on our apartment, installing cameras and new locks. My daughter noticed but did not complain. She understood the necessity. Work became complicated when my supervisor summoned me for a meeting. Someone had sent an anonymous tip about my criminal history and unstable conduct. Fortunately, I had been transparent about the custody situation when requesting leave. My boss dismissed the accusations, but cautioned me to be careful. Whoever is doing this is not trifling, he said. The harassment escalated subtly. Flat tires appeared overnight. Neighbors received letters warning them about the dangerous man in apartment 4B. My daughter's school received anonymous calls about my violent tendencies. Each incident alone seemed minor, but collectively, They painted a picture of systematic intimidation. I documented everything, building another file. The police could do little without proof linking it to specific individuals. My daughter handled it remarkably well, though I observed the strain in her eyes. One night, she broke down over homework, throwing her pencil across the room. "I cannot concentrate," she cried. "Every time things feel normal, something occurs. When does it cease?" I held her while she sobbed, wishing I possessed answers. "We are stronger than they imagine," I whispered. "We will outlast this." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Daniel, a colleague I barely knew, approached me at lunch looking uncomfortable. "This is awkward," he began, "but my cousin works at the prison where that individual is. He has been compensating people to make calls, send messages. Thought you should be aware." My jaw tightened. "Do you have proof?" My cousin could probably obtain some, but he would jeopardize his employment. I understood. Just knowing helps. "Thank you." That evening I hired the private investigator again. If my former best friend was orchestrating harassment from prison, we required evidence. The investigator promised to dig carefully. Meanwhile, life continued. My daughter joined the school debate team, slowly formed friendships, built a normal teenage existence. I attended every competition, every parent meeting, compensating for lost time. During one debate tournament, I noticed a man photographing the crowd rather than the competitors. When he saw me watching, he quickly departed. I followed, catching him at his car. "Can I assist you?" I inquired. He fumbled with keys. "Just taking pictures for the yearbook." "Funny, since you are not wearing a school badge." His face flushed. "Look, I am merely doing a job. Individual paid me to document who attends these events." "What individual?" "I do not know his name. Hired through a friend of a friend. Cash deal." I photographed his license plate as he drove away, another piece for the file. The investigator telephoned a week later with disturbing news. "Your ex has been visiting the prison regularly, more than permitted for non-family. She is listed as his spiritual advisor to gain extra time." "Can they do that?" "Technically, yes. But here is the intriguing part. She has been depositing money into multiple prisoner accounts, not just his, distributing it to avoid detection." The pieces clicked together. They were funding the harassment campaign jointly, utilizing prison connections to maintain distance from the actual acts. "Is it sufficient for police action?" I asked. "Not yet, but I am building a money trail. Grant me more time." Time felt like a luxury we did not possess. My daughter's grades started to decline from stress. She flinched at unexpected noises. The therapy sessions increased to twice weekly. One afternoon, she returned home from school pale and trembling. "There was a man," she said, "outside school. He knew things about me, about us. Said you were not who I thought you were." My blood ran cold. "What precisely did he say?" "That you had harmed other children before me, that there were sealed records, that mom was attempting to protect me, but could not say anything because of legal threats." I telephoned the school immediately, then the police. The security footage showed a middle-aged man approaching my daughter at the bus stop. His face was not clear enough for identification. That night, I sat her down for a difficult conversation. "Do you believe what he said?" She chewed her lip, a habit from childhood I had seen in old videos. "No, but it frightened me. What if there is something I do not know? Then we discover it together," I said. "Full transparency. Would you like to examine my complete background check, employment records, everything?" She nodded. We spent hours going through documents, my entire adult life laid bare, tax returns, employment reviews, medical records. "Utterly uninteresting," she finally said with a small smile, in a positive way. The harassment took a darker turn when a brick crashed through our living room window at 2 o'clock in the morning. Wrapped around it was a note. "Give her back or lose everything." My daughter stood in the doorway, clutching a baseball bat she had retrieved from her room. "I am not returning," she said fiercely. "Ever." The police took it more seriously now. Physical violence crossed a line from harassment to assault. They increased patrols near our building and suggested we consider temporary relocation. "No," my daughter said firmly. "I am weary of fleeing. This is our abode." I had never been prouder of her bravery. Catherine proved invaluable again, rallying community support. Parents from the debate team offered to escort my daughter to and from school. Neighbors organized a watch system. The same community that had once shunned me now stood as protection. The investigator finally achieved success. "I have them," he said, spreading financial records across my kitchen table. "Your ex has been withdrawing cash in structured amounts to avoid reporting requirements. The money matches deposits into prisoner accounts. Those prisoners have been making calls to numbers that trace back to the people harassing you. Is it sufficient?" "More than sufficient. This is conspiracy, money laundering, witness intimidation. The FBI will be very interested." We handed everything over to law enforcement. The investigation moved swiftly once federal authorities became involved. Prison calls were subpoenaed, financial records examined, connections traced. My ex was arrested at her workplace, let out in handcuffs while coworkers observed. The news spread quickly through our old social circles. Catherine kept me updated on the community reaction, shock, disbelief, but also a growing comprehension of the truth. My daughter handled the news quietly. I knew she was assisting him, she said. The visits were too frequent. She never visited that much when I resided there. The trial preparations commenced. We would both need to testify again, reliving painful memories. But this time felt different. We possessed truth and evidence on our side. One evening while preparing dinner together, my daughter said something that stopped me cold. I am glad this occurred. I turned, confused. The harassment? No, all of it. The accident. You returning. Even the frightening parts. She stirred the pasta thoughtfully. If none of this had happened, I would still be living a deception, still being harmed. Now I am free, and I have my real father. I embraced her tightly, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The investigation revealed more than we had anticipated. My former best friend had an entire network inside prison, built through his manipulative charm and my ex's money. They had planned everything, hoping to break us psychologically and force my daughter back into their control. But they had underestimated us. Every assault had made us stronger, more unified. The community that once believed their falsehoods now saw the truth clearly. A month before the trial, I received a letter from prison, not anonymous this time. He had signed it. The handwriting was neat, controlled, but the words seethed with fury. You destroyed my life, it read. I gave that ungrateful child everything, and you poisoned her against me. You believe you have won, but this is not over. I will be released eventually, and when I am, you will pay for every day I have spent in here. I added it to the evidence file. Threats from prison would only prolong his sentence. My daughter read it once, then handed it back. He still does not comprehend, she said sadly. He believes love is ownership. That is why he will always lose. Her insight astonished me. Despite everything she had endured, she had emerged wise beyond her years. The trial date approached. We prepared with prosecutors, reviewing testimony and evidence. My daughter remained steady, determined to speak her truth. Are you afraid? I asked the night before. No, she said firmly. I have been afraid for 10 years. I am finished with fear. As we drove to the courthouse that morning, sunrise painting the sky pink and gold, I felt a sense of completion, not an ending, but a transformation. We had survived the worst they could inflict upon us. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Ready? I asked, parking the car. She squeezed my hand. Ready. We walked into the courthouse side by side, prepared for the final confrontation. Behind us lay months of harassment, intimidation, and fear. Ahead awaited justice, closure, and the promise of a peaceful future. The security checkpoint loomed before us, officers inspecting bags and identification. As we approached, I noticed familiar faces in the lobby. Catherine, supportive neighbors, even my boss. They had come to demonstrate solidarity. My daughter noticed too, her spine straightening with renewed confidence. We were no longer alone. We possessed truth, evidence, and a community that finally saw clearly. The elevator doors opened, ready to transport us to the courtroom. As we stepped inside, my daughter looked up at me with those green eyes, so similar to my own. After this is concluded, she said, can we take a holiday somewhere quiet? Just us. Anywhere you desire, I promised. The doors closed, lifting us towards the confrontation we had both been preparing for. Win or lose, we had already reclaimed what mattered most, each other. The elevator ascended slowly, each floor marking another beat in my chest. My daughter's hand remained steady in mine, her grip firm and resolute. The courtroom awaited on the 7th floor, and with it, the culmination of everything we had fought for. The doors opened to reveal a crowded hallway. Reporters clustered near the courtroom entrance, their cameras and microphones poised. Word had spread about the case, the community's interest piqued by the dramatic apprehension at the school event. I pulled my daughter closer, shielding her from the attention. A court officer approached us. The prosecutor wishes to speak with you both before we commence, he said, gesturing toward a side room. Inside, the lead prosecutor, a woman named Samantha Chun, spread documents across the table. Her expression was serious but encouraging. The evidence is overwhelming, she began. Your ex-wife's financial records demonstrate a clear pattern of funding harassment from prison. Combined with the threatening letter and witness testimonies, we have them cornered. My daughter studied the papers, her face composed. What occurs if they plead guilty? That is what I wish to discuss, Samantha replied. They have been offered a deal. Your mother would receive 2 years, eligible for parole in 1. Your former stepfather would have 3 years added to his current sentence. That is insufficient, I stated immediately. Samantha nodded. I concur, but trials are unpredictable. This guarantees prison time and establishes a permanent record. The decision is ultimately yours. My daughter looked at me, then back at the prosecutor. We proceed to trial. I desire everyone to hear the truth. Pride swelled in my chest at her bravery. Samantha smiled slightly. I hoped you would say that. Let us compel them to confront what they have done. We entered the courtroom through a side door, avoiding the media frenzy. The gallery was filled with familiar faces from our community. Catherine sat in the front row, offering a supportive nod. My boss was there, along with parents from the debate team and neighbors who had witnessed the harassment. My ex-wife sat at the defendant's table, her orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the polished image she had always projected. Her lawyer, a slender man with nervous energy, whispered urgently in her ear. She kept glancing back at us, her expression shifting between anger and desperation. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge McJonathan Williams, a man with sharp eyes and graying temples, took his seat and called the court to order. The charges were read: conspiracy, witness intimidation, money laundering, child endangerment through proxy. Samantha's opening statement was devastating in its simplicity. She presented the timeline, the evidence, the systematic campaign of terror designed to separate a father from his daughter. She played recordings of prison calls, displayed financial transfers, showed the threatening letter. The defense attorney attempted to portray my ex as a victim herself, manipulated by her imprisoned partner. He claimed she was trying to protect her daughter from a man she genuinely believed was dangerous. The argument fell flat against the mountain of evidence. My daughter testified first. She walked to the witness stand with remarkable composure, sworn in with a steady voice. Samantha guided her through the questions gently but thoroughly. She described years of fabrications about me, the emotional manipulation, the fear tactics used to keep her compliant. She detailed finding the photographs, questioning the narrative she had been fed, secretly adding me as her emergency contact, hoping someday I would return. Why did you not reach out sooner? Samantha asked. I was afraid, my daughter admitted. They told me he would harm me if I attempted to contact him. They said he had people watching, waiting for me to make that mistake. The defense attorney's cross-examination was aggressive. He questioned her memory, suggested I had coached her testimony, implied she was rebelling against reasonable parental discipline. My daughter remained calm, answering each challenge with quiet strength. You claim your stepfather struck you, but there are no police reports, no documentation. Why should we believe you now? My daughter lifted her sleeve, revealing faded scars on her forearm. Because I learned to conceal the bruises. Because I was terrified of what would occur if I told anyone. Because they convinced me this was normal, that I deserved it. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors appeared distressed. My ex-wife's facade finally cracked, tears streaming down her face, but I had witnessed those tears before, performed for effect. I testified next, detailing the original custody battle, the decade of silence, the systematic destruction of my relationship with my daughter. I presented every letter I had sent, every returned gift, every attempt to maintain contact. The defendant told you directly about the affair? Samantha asked. Yes, the night of the custody ruling. She said they had been planning it for 2 years. The defense attempted to discredit me, bringing up the false abuse allegations from a decade ago. But Samantha was prepared with Catherine's testimony about my alibi, the investigator's report showing the doctored evidence, the pattern of falsehoods that had finally unraveled. Catherine took the stand next, describing how she had been manipulated into believing the lies. She produced emails from my ex-wife detailing the dangerous things I had supposedly done, each claim more outlandish than the last. I feel like such a fool, Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. I assisted him. I testified against him because I believed their lies. I will never forgive myself for that. The investigator presented his findings methodically: financial records, phone logs, connections between prison accounts, and harassment incidents. He had even located 2 of my former best friend's ex-girlfriends, both willing to testify about his pattern of abuse and manipulation. One by one, community members took the stand. The teacher who had noticed bruises but been told they were from sports. The neighbor who had heard screaming but been assured it was just teenage dramatics. The debate coach who had wondered why such a bright girl seemed so fearful. The prosecution rested after 2 days of devastating testimony. The defense's case was brief and unconvincing. They called character witnesses who had only known my ex-wife superficially. They tried to introduce doubt about the financial records, suggesting accounting errors rather than deliberate fraud. My ex-wife took the stand on the 3rd day. Her lawyer had clearly coached her extensively. She portrayed herself as a devoted mother trying to protect her child, led astray by a manipulative partner. She claimed ignorance of the harassment campaign, said the money was for his commissary needs. Samantha's cross-examination was surgical. She produced visitor logs showing my ex at the prison during times when harassment calls were made. She showed text messages between my ex and various prisoners discussing the project. She played a recorded call where my ex explicitly discussed making him pay for taking her away. You knew about the abuse, did you not? Samantha pressed. You knew your partner was striking your daughter? I suspected, my ex admitted quietly, but I thought she needed discipline. Discipline? Or did you simply not care as long as it kept her in line? My ex's composure shattered. She screamed that I had ruined everything, that I had turned her daughter against her, that I deserved everything they had done. The judge had to call for order, threatening contempt charges. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. As they filed back in, I held my daughter's hand tightly. The foreman stood, verdict in hand. On the charge of conspiracy to commit harassment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of witness intimidation, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment through proxy, we find the defendant guilty. Each verdict struck like a physical blow to my ex-wife. She swayed in her seat, her lawyer steadying her. My daughter remained still beside me, but I felt the tension leave her body with each guilty pronouncement. Sentencing was set for the following month. As court officers prepared to lead my ex away, she turned to look at us one last time. The hatred in her eyes was mingled with something else, perhaps the first genuine emotion I had seen from her in years: fear. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I shielded my daughter as we pushed through, offering no comment. Catherine and other supporters formed a protective circle, assisting us in reaching my car. It is over, my daughter said as we drove away. It is truly over. But I knew better. Legal victories were just one aspect of healing. The genuine work lay ahead. The sentencing hearing arrived faster than anticipated. My ex-wife appeared diminished, the weeks in custody stripping away her carefully maintained facade. The judge reviewed the evidence, the testimonies, the impact on a young girl manipulated and abused by those meant to protect her. 6 years, Judge Williams announced, with possibility of parole after 4, contingent on completing therapy and parenting classes. My ex-wife collapsed, sobbing. Her lawyer requested minimum security placement, citing her lack of violent offenses. The judge agreed but added strict conditions. No contact with us directly or through third parties for 10 years after release. As they led her away, she did not look back. The subsequent months passed in a blur of normalcy that felt surreal. My daughter immersed herself in school, her grades recovering as stress lifted. She formed genuine friendships, joined the drama club, started dating a kind boy from her chemistry class. I watched her blossom with wonder and gratitude. Every milestone, her first school dance, obtaining her driver's license, college acceptance letters, felt like a gift I had never thought I would witness. One evening, as we prepared dinner together in our small kitchen, she brought up something that had been bothering her. Do you think Mom ever truly loved me? She asked, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. I considered my words carefully. I believe she loved the concept of you, the control, the image of a perfect family. But genuine affection means prioritizing someone else's needs. She never acquired that understanding. She nodded, processing this. I feel sympathy for her sometimes, living with all that anger, all those falsehoods. It must be exhausting. Her compassion amazed me.